federal government has announced the removal of value-added tax on diesel for the next 6 months. This was one of the proposals submitted to Labour at the meeting between the government side and the leadership of organised Labour. Part of the resolutions reached, including Labour unions advocating for a higher wage award and the federal government team promising to present this request to President Bola Tinubu for further consideration. The federal government has also clarified that the provisional wage increase announced during the president's broadcast is for all categories of workers and not for only low-income workers. Some of the resolutions reached include the formation of a subcommittee to implement government interventions, the urgent address of issues involving road transport associations in Lagos State, and consideration by NLC and TUC to suspend the planned strike for further consultations.
With Labour and government side, since 3 o'clock, we're now at 7 o'clock, so it's been about a 4-hour meeting. A lot of issues were addressed, issues that concern the Nigerian worker, the average Nigerian worker, pertinent issues. I can't begin to reel them out here, but I am happy to say that after 4 hours, we have reached certain agreements that inure to the benefit of the Nigerian worker. Agreements on wage bill, agreements on committees, on salary increment, agreement on the CN bosses, agreement on several other things, I believe, both TUC, Labour and government side. We will, hopefully, we expect that Labour will call a meeting of their various branches and executive tomorrow to present the agreements that have been reached, and we pray and we believe and we hope that the strike will be called off on Tuesday. Twitter, there was a lot of chatter on Twitter about the issue of low income workers only falling into the category of the wage bill, and they supported that, and that has we did communicate with Mr. President, and he quickly did say and agree that that all categories of workers will be given the wage bill. There's nothing like low income, mid income, or high income. It's very important for us to underscore something. Labour and government are not adversaries. Labour and government are working, at least moving forward, in partnership for the good of the common man. That's important to underscore. Thank you very much.
What the Chief of Staff have said, we have been meeting, we have looked at almost all the issues, all the promissory notes, from the government. And we looked at how to translate them to reality, and to be workable. And then we're going to take those promises to our organs. Of course, these people here cannot just wake up and review and call off action. So, like he said, we're hopeful that our organs will have a look at them and give us a fresh mandate on what next to do.
Let me, on behalf of the TUC, also point out to the fact that we've had a series of conversations surrounding the issue raised, and we do hope that by tomorrow we are going to get across to our organs so that we can also look at it and cross-fertilize ideas and see the way forward. I'm sure we are coming back again.
Looks like we're making progress, Rufai, and there might not be a strike tomorrow at midnight and tomorrow.
Okay, that's for Labour to determine.
Yes.
When they meet with their people. After every meeting, people are always optimistic. But optimism is different from reality on ground. What's the reality on ground? The president gave a speech yesterday, which I heard clearly. He talked about 25,000 award for low-wage workers. All of a sudden, they said there was chatter on Twitter, X. And the next thing, they've changed that amount to all workers. I'd like to ask, how far-reaching will that be? 35,000 naira now here for 6 months. So what happened to the workers after 6 months? Some of the things they reached in the meeting they had yesterday. Number one, the 35,000 naira mentioned. Fast-tracking CNG. We've been talking about CNG for over a year. And we keep using this word, fast-track. The president announced in a statement, the kits will arrive soon. See, with CNG, it's not about the arrival of the kits or fast tracking. It's about ensuring adoption. And adoption is a big deal. Ensuring that when you go to CNG gas stations, you'll be able to get CNG. Availability of the product. Understanding the market forces. The president talked about a $250 billion presidential CNG gas initiative. How practical will that be? And what have they done? It's not a case of fast tracking. Number two, so if you ask me, I'll say that also is just a wish list. Another one the government says it will do, commit to the provision of micro and small scale industry. What is that? What is that? What does it mean? Commit to what? What would you do? Either to the president announce some palliative and announce some money that will be given. Has that money been released to small scale industries? VAT on diesel will be waived for 6 months. After 6 months, what happened? 75,000 payment for 15 million households over 3 months. After the 3 months, what happens? So we have heard all of these promises before. And that's why when we look at it, we say tremendously, the government keeps showing bad faith in this conversation. But also, Labour has a fault. Labour has also shown lack of circumspection in all of this conversation. Because what does Labour really want? Is this what they bargained for? Tokenism? That we just push the count down the road a bit, that would shelve a strike? No, what we are saying is a total, holistic taking of responsibility on the part of the government to be able to solve the niggling problems affecting a lot of people, and we are not seeing that on both fronts, both Labour and the government.
Right.
Okay, first, the president addressed the country yesterday, but his statement with regard to organized labor and how to address the disagreements, discontent, arising therefrom were majorly promissory notes. Yeah. He said, look, we would increase money for average low-grade workers. Who is that average low-grade worker that the speechwriter put into the speech? Okay, 25,000 was promised. Money will be made available for SMEs. Money will be made available for 15 million households who will receive 75,000 naira each over a period of 3 months from October to December. Okay, but later in the day, organized labor met with government officials. And we were told that after 4 hours meeting, certain resolutions, certain agreements were reached, which the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, hoped will lead to a situation whereby organized labor will call off its proposed strike starting tomorrow. But organized labor made no commitment. What they said was that they were going to consult with their respective organs, TUC organs, NLC organs today, and that it is those organs, affiliates, bodies under organized labor that will take a decision eventually. So today, what decision will organized labor take? In other words, it is not clear that there will be no strike tomorrow until we get the feedback from organized labor. Now let's look at the content of some of the things they are promising. They've now increased the money to 35,000 naira, provisional wage increment for the next 6 months for people who take money from the treasury. But note, federal workers. They have walked back on the fact that some workers are low grade. But Gbajabiamila said the president has changed his mind. Nobody is an average worker, nobody is low grade. Okay, if this is done for federal workers, what happens to workers at the state level, who are also members of NLC and TUC? What happens to workers in the private sector, who are also, affiliates in many regards of organized labor? There's that gray area. Nobody has talked about that. This 35,000 naira that will be given to workers, where is the money coming from? Is it in the Appropriation Act for 2023, or the money will just be provided through environment? We don't have any details in that regard. Number 3, they are talking about compressed natural gas for the provision of vehicles. Okay, how many vehicles for transportation is the Nigerian government going to provide? Are they going to provide 100,000, 200,000? How many people will be moved around by this CNG? And you can't say you want to produce CNG buses when you don't have a supply, in place for gas. We are having issues with the production of gas. So where is the gas for these CNG buses? Where will it come from? And then beyond that, why are they not even talking about LPG, which is the gas that most Nigerians use, the cost of which has gone through the roof? If you want to engage the poor people, that you can easily do that through that regard. Now, number 3, they're saying 15 million households will receive 75,000 naira, 25,000 naira per month. Okay, for 3 months. After 3 months, what then happens to those families? So no details were given, just promises. Okay, SMEs will receive money. Which SMEs? Where will the money come from? General talk by the president put in purple prose about how he's committed, he will serve Nigerians faithfully, and he knows there is hardship, but he will address all of that. But as Labour's demands been met, we will see what Labour decides today. Labour has said it to consult his organs. However, we know that the athletes, ASU has declared support and commitment, SANU has declared support and commitment, NOLGE in the various state chapters, including Ondo State, that chapter has said, well, it's fully ready to go out tomorrow. The only dissenting voice that we have there is the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, still insisting through his spokespersons that, look, this will cause a lot of hardship. Yes, we know that. The residual thing that Nigerians can hold on to, that we all know, is that 1, inflation is very high. In some states, food inflation is over 35%. Headline inflation is very high. And we're dealing on a daily basis with a crisis. And if Labour goes ahead with the strike, we will be the ones to bear the brunt. The second thing is that even if Labour does not go on strike, we're in the same situation, and Labour will have issues in terms of trust. And why is it that it is the last minute that the Nigerian government is suddenly having a last-minute meeting and then making promises? They could have done this since June. They could have engaged organized labor better. Now, what the most ridiculous part of it was Mohammed Idris, the Minister of Information, stating in a report of the meeting that a subcommittee will now be set up. They set up Presidential Steering Committee that did nothing for 3 months. They set up subcommittees that ran away from the negotiating table. So why have we been told the same thing over and over again? Organized labor will have to tell us what, if they are convinced, what their conviction is based upon. Joe Ajero and the TUC leaders, they will have a lot of explanation to give us later today. We wait, we watch.
Absolutely. Committees upon committees upon committees and little or no obvious action to persuade the Nigerian people that the federal government is working on their behalf. Yesterday's meeting between the federal government and organized labor, as we saw there, chaired by the Chief of Staff to the President, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, had come out with a few resolutions which have already been highlighted, looked at and just talked about. If you read the body language of both Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila and Comrade Joe Ajero, it looks like the meeting was quite successful. They held a joint press briefing afterwards to inform that they'd come to a few agreements. However, as has been mentioned, would this agreement or promises at best be satisfactory for organized labor and the Nigerian people whom they represent? As has been said, at best, the announcement or the communication from the meeting looked like a hastily put together agreement just to stall the planned strike, which has been described as the mother of all strike actions, whereby the nation will be shut down and organized labor have enjoined as many people as possible to participate in this strike. And so obviously the federal government is scrambling to ensure that, this doesn't happen. However, is this good enough for organized labor? Is this good enough for the Nigerian people? And is this good enough to stall this strike? They said the right things, mentioned the right words. However, they haven't responded to some of the critical questions raised by the NLC in their independent speech yesterday, as delivered and signed off by Comrade Joe Ajero. He asked some very pertinent questions, and I believe that those questions ought to be evaluated, and perhaps federal government should respond to that. I don't know if he brought it up during their conversation yesterday, but he spoke about the refineries in that address. He spoke about the fact that Nigerians who were 133 million in multidimensional poverty a year or two ago have that number has increased because of the attendant effect of fuel subsidy removal. What we've seen again and again, and which we talked about on the show, it's quite unfortunate that this government seems not to have come in prepared to respond to some of the pertinent issues they talked about during campaign season. And so whilst they make the right soundbite, when it comes to the implementation of it, it becomes problematic. And so yesterday during the president's speech, he had talked about the fact that, you had to take certain decisions, especially as it applies to reforms. However, Nigerians, I have to say that Nigerians are not opposed to the idea of reform or changes, as we saw with the unification of the foreign exchange and also with fuel subsidy removal. It's the implementation and the obvious lack of thought in terms of processes. So it doesn't inspire lots of confidence when they come up with ideas around paying conditional cash transfers to 15 million households without a concrete plan in place. The talk about the fact that they're going to pay 35,000 naira. Again, within 24 hours, a change from the president's speech. So it feels as if they're just working as they go on. There's no consultation, the obvious consultation, the basis for their arriving at that number, the basis for the arrival of who will be the beneficiary of that amount. Those are some of the conversations and concerns for a number of Nigerians that we need to have. We need to have policies that are well thought out, relevant stakeholders consulted, and properly implemented. We move on to our next story. A United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois has ordered Chicago State University, CSU, to release the academic records of President Bola Tinubu to Nigeria's former vice president and the presidential candidate of People's Democratic Party, PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, unfailingly by midday today, October 2nd. The court ordered that deposition of the university must be completed by tomorrow, Tuesday, October 3. The order followed Honorable Nancy Maldonado's overruling of Tinubu's objection to the release of his academic records at CSU to Atiku. Maldonado's order, which came after nearly 2 months of fierce legal fireworks in the U.S. over the authenticity of the diploma certificate paraded by Nigeria's president, was expected to resolve all controversies over Tinubu's educational qualifications, which had been raging for nearly 3 decades. Maldonado, in her court judgment delivered on September 30, emphasized, and I quote, that it is expressing no view on the merits of Mr. Abubakar's claims regarding President Tinubu's graduation from CSU or on the validity of the Nigerian election, nor is this court taking any position on what any of the documents or testimony from CSU may or may not ultimately show. End of quote. Right, fine.
I mean, pure and simple, it is clear. After all the legal fireworks, which in my own opinion, because a lot of people can quote law for what it's worth, wasn't worth it in the first place. And the truth has to be said, that if somebody put himself forward for an electable position in the country, they should be able to see his antecedents and his documents, pure and simple. So after all the legal fireworks, Judge Maldonado has finally ruled by saying, please, release the documents. So whatever you make up your mind what you will, the documents will be out there in public glare or to the Atiku team. And the judge did say that this is not the time to file any further appeal so that they'll be able to respect the stipulated time in the Supreme Court. Whether the Supreme Court will be able to adopt new evidence, the jury is out of that. Some have argued that they will not adopt new evidence and everything. Some have argued that, in external circumstances, they can. Whatever the argument out there is legally, the judge has ruled. But I think what is pertinent for all of us is, why go through this rigmarole as a society? Why should it be a big deal? Why should it be a big fuss? And for all of those that have argued across both paths, let us remember that every society has its own moral code. And whatever it builds, work for it. And fast becoming a society, as Nigeria, we are fast becoming a society where we are losing every vestige of that moral code. Chinua Achebe wrote instructively, there was a country. And that's the country we're looking at today. And if we don't uphold our tenets in society and ask due questions, then we'll have problems. I'll quote Chinua Achebe in There Was a Country. He said something profound. He said, nations enshrine mediocrity as their modus operandi and create fertile ground for rise of tyrants and other base elements of society by silently assenting to dismantling of system of excellence because they do not immediately benefit one specific ethnic, racial, political, or special interest group. That, in my opinion, is precisely where Nigeria finds itself today. And I wholeheartedly agree with Chinua Achebe.
Okay, I repeat the point that I've made again and again here, that because this is politics, it is natural for people to be emotional. But we're facing a judicial process, a legal process. I've had people, most recent, Usita Chidoka, writing yesterday that this matter is beyond legalism and that there are lessons we can draw from it. I have no problem with that. Should anybody be sworn in before matters have been resolved, we've said that on this table. Are there lessons that our institutions can learn? Certainly, yes. But to the extent that this is a legal process, let's look at some of the details of the matter. Judge Nancy Maldonado ruled, one, that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has sure grounds under Section 1782 of the Supreme Court Rules of the United States to ask for what he's asking for. Two, she ruled that his interest in the matter outweighs Tinubu's privacy interest. Three, he said that the magistrate court did not err in law and appropriately found in favor of Atiku Abubakar. And that what is before the district court was not an appeal, but a review, which is consistent with the U.S. rules of procedure, as she pointed out. Number four, the more important point, was that repeatedly in that ruling, she made the point that the U.S. court is not in a position to offer an opinion or comment on what is going on in a foreign jurisdiction in Nigeria. And that with regard even to the likely use of that material, the discovery from CSU, it has nothing to do with the U.S. And I've made that point again and again on this program, that this is a question of jurisdiction. No foreign court in a matter of civil litigation can dictate to another jurisdiction. Even if it is relevant, it has to be registered in that other jurisdiction before it can be considered. So what we're waiting for now is this discovery for use. The emphasis is on discovery for use in a foreign jurisdiction. Now, the mention was made of October 5, within which time, the PDP and Atiku Abubakar can still use this in the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Now, the matter is as follows. We may well find ourselves in a situation whereby all of this, the relevance of this discovery, will be moot and entirely academic. In ordinary proceedings, you can bring new evidence on appeal if the necessary conditions are met. But in our electoral jurisprudence, there's a difference because election matters are sui generis and they are also time-bound. Now, this electoral matter in the presidential matter, the 180 days had already been, covered. Can you bring evidence after the 180 days before the appellate court? So the appellate court is going to have issues of jurisdiction. Now, if the appellate court, in this case the apex court, is seized of jurisdiction and is going to consider the matter based on exceptional circumstances, based on Order 2 of Supreme Court rules that everybody has been quoting up and down, okay, how about timing? The appeals were filed on September 18. When you file the appeals, the registrar of the Supreme Court has 10 days within which to put all the documents together and inform the various parties. Okay, that passed already, I think on September 17 or so, or 18. Now, beyond that, all the parties now have 7 days within which to file their briefs. Okay? By the time the matter in the U.S. court, is completed, and then you have to go through the process of registering, filing a motion or notice, and a notice or a motion or notice, and all of that. We also have the issue of the efflution of time. So if the efflution of time kicks in, even the apex court will not be able to look at the matter in relation to all the points I have made, apart from this time limitation in electoral jurisprudence, the issues of relevance. There are lordships to have to consider. Is it relevant? Is the weight of evidence, is it of moment? Is it important? And then is it admissible? That will be a long process. By the time you go through all of that, what you may be left with are these moral, emotional issues that people are raising. And in any case, this discovery for use about diploma, we wait. It may not be any earth-shaking discovery. If it is a diploma, the Atiku Abubakar team, they are basing their argument on Section 137, as amended in, I think, 2020, that you cannot present a forged certificate. But still, forgery is also a technical thing. You will have to prove it. So these are some of the issues, but there are lessons that we can learn, certainly, from the entire process. I do not argue with that.
Absolutely. Well, we're out of time now. I had to go. However, what I must say is that by today, tomorrow, we will uncover the certificate, and hopefully this matter will be put to rest, and we can certify that the president is, everything he has said and submitted in his Form 9 to INEC is true. And if it's not, then it's left for the court to decide on that one.